could be your hero, but I can't get out of bed. There's too much in my head. I could be more faithful, but I fail at that habit. So I run around instead. I wanna be good to myself, love hard to breathe more, drink less. I wanna be seen at my best, sleep more, be natural, I less. All I need is 21 days and I'm fine. January 1, I'ma still need more time. Every single year, yeah, it never fails, I try. But maybe I don't ever wanna put down this life. I could be your best friend, but I can't pick up my phone. Let it ring cause no one's home. I'm always judging and degrading. I should stop all that, I'm sure, but I'm just too insecure. I wanna be good to myself, love hard to breathe more, drink less. I wanna be seen at my best, sleep more, be natural, I less. All I need is 21 days and I'm fine. January 1, I'ma still need more time. Every single year, yeah, it never fails, I try. But maybe I don't ever wanna put down this life. All I need is 21 days and I'm fine. January 1, I'ma still need more time. Every single year, yeah, it never fails, I try. But maybe I don't ever wanna put down this life.
Start thinking, all the details start to sink in. No, I don't care about the right now. Spend the summer in this beach house. Cause I will try to play my part. My lies memorized. Conspiracies on TV. I know the truth and it's so simple. Blame it all on stupid impulse. And I keep living out of my head. Just forgive me for my silence. Cause I will try to play my part. My lies memorized in my heart. Cause I will try to play my part. My lies memorized in my heart. Cause I will try to play my part. My lies memorized in my heart.
Hello there. Hello there. Hello there, YouTubes, Twitches. That's basically the two platforms I'm on right now. So, that's a thing. How are we all? I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Now, this was not a planned one as such. This is sort of related to the Superb Owl. Some people call it the Super Bowl. They're clearly wrong. It's Superb Owl. But I feel this year the owl won't be as good for a number of reasons pertaining to my deep desire to have a sexual congress with Tom Brady. It's a strange thing. I won't go into it. So I don't really want to watch the Superb Owl this year. Obviously, I will. I'll be doing this with it in a monitor on the corner of the screen. So I obviously still will be watching it because I'm a fucking addict, okay? And I have no intention of ever getting past my addiction. Anyway, so Tom Brady plays for a different team now, and so I don't want him to win, but I can't back against him. So it's impossible for me. So this year, I'm going to be doing this instead, which is a thing where I'm going to be watching an idiot who goes by the name Carl Hussein Benjamin talk nonsense about a thing. Yeah. Oh, hello to Christy in the chat, by the way. And everyone else, don't get me wrong. I appreciate you all being here, but Christy is a close friend, so... That's, like, hello. And Christiosity, oh, hello. Yeah, and everyone else, of course. But no, there is a pecking order, okay? Let's not pretend otherwise. Yes, we will be taking a look at the floater eaters. Someone sent me a link to a particular video that they did, where Carl exposes the fact that he's still coping. He's still desperately, pathetically coping with the fact that Donald Hussein Trump. It's fun. I get why they do it. I get why they do that, okay? It's fun to just say Hussein in a much slightly menacing way as the middle name for people. I presume that's why they do it, and then they're not just hideously racist towards Barack Obama. I don't know. But it's certainly very fun. Anyway, yes, he's huffing hard on the copium to this very day, many months later. But like I say, because of the Super Bowl, apologies to anyone who would have wanted to watch both, but will now be forced to choose. I am not one of those people, like I say. I will be both doing this and watching, so I refuse to make a choice. But I do want to be distracted, so, Anyway, so let's dig into this, shall we? With a video entitled... Oh, hang on, I need to resize that, don't I? Don't I just? How Trump lost. Let's just... Oh, hang on. Oh, stop it now. How Trump lost. There we go. So that's what it's called. And I suppose, technically, the fact that they're saying he lost... Is that technically personal growth for these fucking idiots? I suppose it is. I mean, but when you're growing personally from like a height of nothing, when you can stand up straight and still get under the conga bar? What's it called? The thing where you shimmy under the bar like backwards. I'm very white. You must understand this. I don't know. Anyway. What happened to Carl's head? Good question. That's just a generally good question. What did happen to it? I believe he's had it shaved, and he looks... he looks shit. Limbo is the fucking word I'm looking for. Apologies, everybody. Yes. When you're already being able to jump and still get under the limbo bar, personal growth is, Not that difficult to achieve. Anyway, they're going to be looking through a Time magazine article, which is, I think, the first time anyone's looked at a Time magazine article in about 25 years. But they are going to be doing so. And essentially, I'll lay it out for you now. If you want to go and rush off and watch the Super Bowl, because it starts in like half an hour or something, I'll give you the TLDR. They're going to read an article where they... a sensationally written article in a magazine, which is a format which is dying, but whatever. They're going to they're reading out an article where basically they explain how political organising works, how like get out the vote works and political pressure groups and stuff, how that operates, and make it seem. And they're going to try and make that article make it seem like Trump was right in all these conspiracy theories. When the article literally just describes, in a sensationalist, over-the-top way, how political operations work, basically. So, let's take a look. Now, Carl was taken in, I think, initially by the headline, because that's what Carl does. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Ooh, shadow campaign. He's thinking to himself, Illuminati moon Jews. Definitely.
That's what makes this article such a shock. Now, again, before we begin, every single Republican should take the time to read this article. It
means Republican in the American sense rather than the British sense. Because I'm a Republican in the British sense. That I think the monarchy is ludicrous and needs to be gotten rid of. He means Republican as in Americans, where they ironically think the opposite and they want a king. Specifically Donald Trump as king. But, you know, it's what they do.
Single one. Make sure that every Republican politician sees this. Make sure every talking head sees this. Don't allow
Make
this
sure
to just be
Mike
something
Lindell
we,
sees this.
This little part of the internet are aware of, because I just can't get over this. So as you can see, it's called...
Yeah, you really can't get over this. That's just, I think, a general problem that Carl has. He just can't get over this. He can't get over that Daddy Trump lost. And that, for me, is too delicious. It's a beautiful thing.
The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. So it was all very, very strange. Trump said on December the 2nd, within days of the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint the winner, even while many key states were still being counted. In a way, Trump was right. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. The pact was formalized in a terse, little-noticed joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and AFL-CIO published on the election day.
You don't need to put the dash in there. When he repeatedly says the word dash, it's just AFL-CIO. You don't need to put the dash. It's a small point, but it's just annoying because it clearly means he's never heard them raised before in a discussion, so he doesn't really know what this is. It's just, if you know what to look for when it comes to these petty fuckheads, and trust me, I'm something of a self-taught expert on the matter. I'm something of a dilettante, one might say. Over the years, I've learnt to pick up on little things like that they reveal themselves to be the ignorant fuckheads that they are. That's it. Just again, you've got to look for those little signs, the little tells, to use a poker phrase.
AFL-CIO is a collection of American unions.
Trade unions,
The people who would normally be against each other have decided to form an alliance, is what they're saying. Both sides would...
Yeah, because democracy's A, good for business, and B, good for workers. I know that seems crazy, Carl, but it actually is, in different ways, for different reasons and all the rest of it. But democracy is generally a positive thing. Yeah. It's democracy is good. Call me crazy, Carl. I happen to agree with them. I think democracy is pretty good. Now, the American democracy is shaky. The British democracy is arguably worse in some ways, but slightly less shaky in others. But even so, it's better than, like, theocracy or absolutist monarchy or fascism.
come see it as
And I know you might not necessarily s- privately agree with that concept, but you know. No, publicly. Yeah. Hang on. What am I talking about? Anyway, basically, I'm saying Carl wants authoritarianism. Is the basic gist of what I'm trying to point out there.
a sort of implicit bargain
I forgot what
inspired
tense
by
I was
the
using.
summer's massive, sometimes destructive racial justice protests, in which the forces of Labour came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy. The handshake between
Yeah, Trump's assault on democracy. Again, they're going to take the bits from this article they like the sensationalist wording of conspiracy. Because, again, a conspiracy doesn't have to even be nefarious. It can just be you getting together. Because, I mean, these CEOs and the AFL-CIO are, I should say, because they're multiple, Kev. Come on. Multiple and singular are different. We're above this. Now, they are private individuals / organisations. As long as they're not engaged in subverting democracy, as they're engaged in like positive advocacy for democratic processes, then what they're doing is completely fine. It's technically a conspiracy in the sense that they're often doing it in private, although of course they're often doing it in public too. Like they're not a shadowy cabal, although the word cabal does get used in this, which is incredibly irresponsible journalism given the use of the word cabal in modern political parlance in America. Which basically means the Jews are running stuff, or the pedophilic Satanists are running stuff. Which there's a fair overlap in terms of the theories there. Anyway, yes. So they're not actually like a shadowy cabal of people. Like you literally go on to say they name the people in the article. Well, it's not that fucking secret, then, is it? Forgive me, right? But forgive me here, right? But would the stealing of a democracy? Or stealing of a country via some sort of weird conspiracy theory thing here, would that be better served by doing it privately or by coming out and saying, look, we did some stuff to make a democracy happen? Like, surely the point of a secret conspiracy, a nefarious plot to overthrow a good thing, they do so quietly? Generally speaking. Like, forgive me, but the word secret implies a certain amount of quietness on the topic. And Rory Katz wants to get out now because he's a dickhead. Anyway, where were we? He is a knob. Would it be worth installing a cat flap? Because to be honest, that's just going to be annoying to hear the cat flap go. I don't know. If you want to pay for a cat flap, actually, I can't promise that because I'd still have to fix it. But you can still give me money. For streamlabs.com/careflogan1875. The link is below. You can throw me a couple of bucks. You get your super chat on the screen and I will read it out. But I will not dance. I dance to my own tune, okay? Oh yeah, go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go and give me a follow on Twitch and all of that jazz.
Between business and Labour was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election. An extraordinary...
To protect the election? Oh no. Look, he says that like that's really bad. I always thought defending an election was probably a good idea. But, silly.
Shadow effort dedicated not to winning the vote but to ensuring it would be free and fair, credible and uncorrupted. Though much of this activity took place on the left, it was separate from the Biden campaign and crossed ideological lines. Yeah, very interesting how they delineate it from the Biden campaign here.
Because it wasn't being run by the Biden campaign? In fact, many of the people involved in this were saying, we do not support Joe Biden. We don't think he's like a good dude, but we see the more immediate danger being a second Trump term, so we'll try and actively campaign to get Biden into office and then campaign against Biden once he's in office, you know. The point being that they wanted to stop the fascisms and rather compete with a kind of vaguely kind of centrist Biden administration, because at least then what you're actually doing is preserving democracy. That's the point of what these people were trying to do. Again, call me crazy. I personally happen to think defending a democracy, good idea. generally a positive thing. I don't know why I'm doing it in a high voice.
With crucial contributions by non-partisan and conservative actors. The scenario the shadow campaigners were desperate to stop was not a Trump victory. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all, a failure of the central act of democratic self-governance that has been the hallmark of America since its founding. But why would there be a scenario where no winner could be discerned? It's just the person with the most votes. It's very easy.
No, it's not very easy, Carl, is it? Because the person who got most votes, the person who gets most votes is almost always the Democrat, and yet the victories aren't always Democrat at all. So you're fundamentally wrong. The winner is based on the absolutely ludicrous, farcically outdated electoral college system. If it was done on popular vote, the Republicans would have won, I think, is it one of the last 9 general elections? Pointedly, they've won significantly more than 1 of the last 9. So, I'm just saying, bro, you're just fucking wrong. And should probably, therefore, shut the fuck up. Really? Would be good.
Anyway, their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and used data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. The untold story of the election.
That's interesting that he's kind of like slightly sneering at data-driven strategies, because without data-driven strategies and misinformation, Brexit would never have happened. And my country would be much the better for it, but Cambridge Analytica is a thing.
Is the thousands of people of both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its very foundation, says Norm Eisen, a prominent lawyer and former Obama...
Norm Eisen! No! You can tell why I'm doing that noise, because it's a traditionally Jewish name, and Carl, not a fan. Not a fan of the, of God's chosen. You know what I'm saying?
Administration official who recruited Republicans and Democrats to the board of the Voter Protection Program. For Trump and his allies were running their own campaign to spoil the election. The president spent months in...
Motherfucker, just stop reading the article and get to the really crazy shit you're going to say. I only watched about the first half of this, so I know he reads some of the article, or most of the article. But I want to get to the funny bits that he's going to say. He's going to say some crazy shit. Get to that. Stop reading the article. That bit's boring. Your audience think it's boring. My audience think it's boring. So just get to the crazy. Give me the cray-cray.
Insisting that mail ballots were a Democratic plot and the election would be rigged. His henchmen at the state level sought to block their use, while his lawyers brought dozens of spurious suits to make it more difficult to vote, an intensification of the GOP's legacy of suppressive tactics. But these things aren't vote rigging.
Yes, they absolutely are, Carl. What in the fuck are you talking about? Yes, they are. They're not rigging in the sense that they're fucking with the voting machines. They're doing it before then. In the terms of the timeline, they're getting in there before the votes take place. They're stopping lots of people from voting. We've seen how it's vote rigging from the recent Georgia elections, that if you are able to successfully get around the obvious voter suppression of largely black and lower income peoples in these areas, around especially sort of Atlanta and I believe Savannah, then you're able to actually show that these areas are not red. Georgia is not a red state if you actually allow the black people to vote. So yes, Carl, the voter suppression tactics are absolutely vote rigging. The gerrymandering is vote rigging. The entirety of the electoral college system is vote rigging. The entirety of the fact that each fucking state has 2 senators regardless of population size is vote rigging. Or election rigging, whatever, right? At the moment, there's a 50-50 tie in the Senate between Democratic and Republican senators. The Democratic senators represent 41 million more Americans. 41 million. That is a very significantly sized country in of itself. 41 million people. Note that, okay? Sophia donates $1, thank you very much. They say, I'm still gut laughing from the time Sargon told me he was a public intellectual. LMFAO, oh, that's amazing. Please say you've got a screenshot of that, because that's the fart hufferiest fart huff that he ever did, surely. Public intellectual. Oh, kiss my rim. And thank you to Unsas for following on Twitch. If you want to go and follow, you can follow on Twitch. You can also subscribe to me on Twitch, either by paying money, or if you've got an Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to me for free and redistribute Jeff Bezos' billions. We'll have him in the poorhouse by this time Christmas in the year 3,960 million point four. That's I don't know how years work in the future.
I mean, it just seems that Trump spoke and didn't want to expand the use of mail-in ballots, which isn't a normal procedure, really.
No, but neither is having a global pandemic. That's not a normal procedure. It's a thing that happened, though, isn't it? And not just that, but you have places like Pennsylvania, which was one of these swing states that was so heavily contested by Trump, where bipartisan legislation led to an expansion of voting by mail before the pandemic had even happened. Because they realised, oh, actually, should we try and extend the ways in which people can access the franchise? That's probably better for democracy, isn't it? But no, the Republicans can only win by cheating.
Internationally, this is not a normal thing to do.
No.
We have massive problems.
Shut the
with
fuck
UK,
up, Joey.
No
one cares what you have to
And
say.
Leicester, there was a factory producing ballots in Leicester. And Amazon won't have their unions operate using mail-in ballots because of the threat of mail fraud.
Amazon won't necessarily let the unions operate at all, Carl. Why are you siding with multi-fucking... is he a trillionaire yet? I don't even know. Jeff Bezos Basington III, Esquire, who is a complete piece of fucking shit. The fact that he is trying some weird way to try and get around allowing his workforce's unions to operate properly is irrelevant. I don't care. He's a piece of shit, Carl. I don't know if you're aware of that. Also, you're supposed to be a populist, so maybe stop sucking his dick. And also, as to the examples he gave of voter fraud here in Britain, those were discovered. Those were discovered and dealt with, Carl. No one's saying that there aren't nefarious people who will try and abuse the system. Of course there are. But the point is, A, you have to prove instances where that has taken place, and B, when they do take place, they get corrected. So, I mean, that's kind of the system working as it should. Because, again, you can't stop people of ill will trying to enact that ill will. That's not, like, possible or even desirable from, like, a kind of 1984-esque mind control perspective, okay? The government should not seek to try and fuck with people's brains in that way. So, it's fundamentally ridiculous to even try or to even want that kind of control. Especially from you who claims to be like a small government, classical liberal, whatever. So you're not going to be able to stop people of ill will doing ill will. Or enacting ill will. But what you can do is find it and correct it. And you gave examples of where that did take place. So, yeah.
So it's like...
What was wrong with his concern?
Yeah, Trump's concerns seem to be legitimate.
No, Trump's concerns were not legitimate. Trump was a lying piece of shit who made a rod for his own back, ironically, because his absolute fucking bullshit regarding voter fraud cost him in the election. Because the red mirage that he was told about that would take place because of his fear-mongering around voter fraud is exactly why he lost. That is literally how he lost. Now, he may very well still have lost had he even encouraged his devotees to vote via mail That's still perfectly possible, but it wouldn't have taken the weird snake-like turn of, like, oh, Trump looks like he might win, and then he lost reasonably comfortably in the end, actually. Not a landslide by any means, but, reasonable.
I don't see any evidence that Trump was trying to spoil the election.
Are you fucking joking with me? Are you actually trying to pull my penis with this one? You fucking idiots. He fucked significantly with the USPS, which is a federal crime. Tried to completely nobble it to the point where hundreds of thousands of votes were just stuck in delivery centres, not going anywhere. He literally said before the election that the only way he could lose is via fraud, which is, again, setting up the idea that democracy is fundamentally illegitimate unless you win, which is very fascistic. He, subsequent to the vote, literally pressured, we have the fucking audio, pressuring elected officials in Georgia of his own party who he had backed and who backed him in the election. Right, so not Democratic operatives, we're talking about Trumpian Republicans, trying to pressure them into essentially stealing the election. Oh, you just need to find me 11,000 votes, or whatever the exact number was. So, yeah, don't talk shit, okay, Carl? He absolutely tried to fuck with the election. You know it. Everyone else knows it. This is the next step for right-wingers over the next 4 years, is Operation Gaslight the fuck out of everyone. Make it seem like the reality they lived through, the 4 years of jet-powered bullshit flushed into your face daily by Trump and his fascist acolytes. That didn't happen. What are you talking about, kids in cages? That didn't happen. What are you talking about? He tried to interfere and steal an election. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. It's just going to be that over and over and over. And the same people who enabled the fascist evil to rise in America are going to be trying to downplay it. Now they want unity. Now they want an end to division. Having been forcibly chiseling at the cracks in American society for the last 4, 5, 10, 20 years, now they want an end to division. Kiss my dick. There's a cat who wants to come into the room now. Anyway.
Unless you have a predetermined result in mind, and you may not get that result through the regular electoral process. And so they say this is the inside story of the conspiracy to save the 2020 election. So Trump's conspiracy theories are being validated by Time magazine, who say that there was a conspiracy and they're going to tell us about it.
No, Carl, that's clearly wrong. 1 second. Yeah, I get a baby cat. Baby cats. Go on, speak to the people, Rory kids. You're not being very talkative, are you, lad? Oh, we've got some toe bean action as well. Toe beans. Anyway. Yes, the point that was missed there. He did have a predetermined result in mind, obviously. Like, really obviously. He said before the election that he could only lose if it wasn't if it was cheating, that he couldn't lose normally. So he was already setting up that there was one election result he would accept and everything else was fake, which is not democracy. What was the last thing he said? Hang on.
So Trump's conspiracy theories are being validated by Time magazine.
No, they're not, Carl. No, they're not. Firstly, even if some of them were being validated, that wouldn't really make any difference because the outlandish ones are fucking mental. At no point does this article say, oh yes, and the ghost of Hugo Chavez was working via an office in Canada and Britain and Rome and Spain and Japan and North Korea and China to steal the election by sending in ballots via boat in Maine. Like, none of that's in the article at all. And secondly, the use of the word conspiracy here is meant to sucker in idiots. And to use a fishing analogy, you took the bait, Carl. You are now dangling irresistibly on the end of that line. They're reeling you in. The use of the word conspiracy doesn't mean conspiracy in the way that, say, the 9/11 hijackers, they secretly conspired to do an evil thing. That's like a nefarious conspiracy, right? Or any number of other things throughout history. This is a conspiracy in the sense that people were doing... I mean, it started off privately, sure, but they did public works to try and, like, you know, get people to vote and stuff. That's difficult to keep silent, isn't it? To try and get people out to vote. It's called political operatives doing political operations, Carl. That's all that took place here. Is what they tried to do. I'll put it as simply as I can for you, Carl. They did a politics. They did. In fact, they did several politicses. I know, crazy talk, right? Now, you can call that a conspiracy in the sense that often these will have been private meetings and such. So technically, it meets the criteria. But we all know what the word conspiracy means here, and it's not the same as like a cabal of secret Muslims are running the world or whatever absurd bullshit. Yeah. Or the Q thing, a cabal of secret pedophile Satanists are running the world. That's what, you know, that's the kind of hype that this article is trying to give to the word conspiracy. By using the word conspiracy, I should say. And you're buying it. Not because you genuinely believe it, but because you're a lying shithead. Like, I don't think he's stupid enough to genuinely think this validates any of Trump's conspiracy theories, just because they use the word conspiracy. They also use the word the, and I'm sure Trump has used the word the. Doesn't mean anything.
Who say that there was a conspiracy and they're going to tell us about it. I'm not misreading this, am I?
No, that's literally...
No, you're not misreading it, Carl. Misreading would be a legitimate mistake. You're purposely reading into it what you want to exist. Thank you to bad_medicine for following me on Twitch. Thank you to Curious Atoms with a Z for subscribing at tier 2. That's very generous. Thank you very much. And thank you to Lace Argo for $10. Again, very generous. You people. You're spoiling me. Maybe I should dance for you. I won't, but maybe I should. Ayup, Sleepless One, I advise you get a cat flap. Not because you should, but because the idea of you on your hands and knees installing a contraption you shall not enjoy the utility of pleases Rory Cats and myself. Love you really, XX. Thank you, Lace Argo. That is very generous and, I'll be honest, a little bit weird. I feel like that's a kink for you that you're trying to express here. And don't get me wrong, I'm not kink shaming you, but I don't feel like I need to be involved, really. Anyway, the links are below. Yeah, if you want to give me money, you can. Why would you? I don't know, but I bless you all for it. You're lovely people. Unlike Carl. Quality segue.
What they're right.
I mean,
like Trump is a conspiracy theorist who thinks there was a conspiracy to get the election away from him.
And here's how it worked.
And here's a...
No, not here's how it worked, Carl. Here's them using the word conspiracy and then going on to describe, because Carl will read through the article here, how they basically did like get out the vote stuff and like political pressure group stuff. Yeah, whoop-de-doo. That's not trying to steal an election, is it? Note how they've changed the phrase save the election to steal the election. Do you ever get the feel you're being propagandised at? I do.
A conspiracy that was behind the 2020 election.
Shut the fuck up, Joey. No one
Just
cares what you have to say.
To make sure the election is free and fair, which...
And went the right way.
That sounds like a dog whistle.
Yeah. Well, let me finish this
That
paragraph.
sounds like a dog whistle. Shut up. I'd give you money if you acknowledge that I'm here. I've acknowledged you, Andrew. Throw money at me. No, I'm joking. You don't have to.
You'll see exactly what I mean. So this is the inside story of the conspiracy to save the 2020 election based on access to the group's inner workings, never-before-seen documents, and interviews with dozens of those involved from across the political spectrum.
So again, it's not like a secret conspiracy if dozens of them are prepared to give you interviews. That's just political operation, Carl. That's them saying, like, oh yeah, I was involved in this group that did political stuff during an election. Which, to be honest, is the best time to do political stuff, really. Or at least in the lead up to, you know.
It is the story of an unprecedented, creative and determined campaign whose success reveals how close the nation came to disaster. Every attempt to interfere with the proper outcome of the election was defeated. That's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream.
Again, he's going to bring up the phrase paranoid fever dream. Carl, this is people bigging themselves up. A lot of the people involved here earn their living in politics, right? They work for either lobbyists or trade unions or newspapers or think tanks or whatever. Or they're involved in the kind of general political milieu of Washington, D.C. specifically, but, around America. And this is them trying to big themselves up to maybe try and get, more traction in the industry, maybe find some better positions. There's a new paradigm in Washington right now because there's a new president who's very different to the old president. So there's kind of shifting sands of the politics, and you've got to read the room. Bigging yourself up and saying, I'm the reason that we got rid of Donald Trump, is potentially a very good way of trying to earn a living in the new Washington, D.C. So, I'm just saying, read into this with a hint of skepticism. This is how you know you're listening to a propagandist, like with Carl, right? If this were an article saying Donald Trump had tried to steal the election, which, by the way, it does, and he doesn't even contend that point, but we're going to... If the entire article was Donald Trump tried to steal the election, he'd be super critical of every tiny little potential hole or loose edge to the story. Whereas in this case, the obvious self-interest of the people involved in this conspiracy to big themselves up in order to try and become more prominent or powerful politically or just financially enrich themselves. Which, by the way, I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing. This is how, political operatives often earn a living, and a very good living doing it, and that's fine in its own way. That obvious self-interest, which would lead them to maybe beefing up the story a little bit, especially to make themselves look very good. Carl's just going to ignore that and accept every word they say as if it's absolutely true. Like, it's very embarrassing.
A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information.
Change rules and laws? Carl, if you're annoyed with that, you're gonna be really shocked to find out what fucking lobbyists have been doing for centuries. Seriously, it's gonna blow your fucking mind, bro. That's what politics is, you fucking idiot.
Let's go through that one by one.
Yeah.
So, to influence perceptions...
Well, before we start, it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, right? So it sounds absurd, and yet they're telling us that this absurdity that they're about to tell us is true.
Yeah, because they're trying to... I mean, I'll stop short of saying the word lie. I'll say they're trying to embellish. They're trying to big themselves up. This is a relatively small group of people who were engaged in some important political activism at relatively high levels. But general elections involving 160 million votes aren't won by, 20 people. They can be influenced to a significant extent, but not won or lost. Like, when they say it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, they're trying to big it up. They're trying to sell the story, Carl. And you're buying it because you want so desperately to believe that the only reason Daddy Trump lost was because of the secret cabals of the Jews. I mean, the politicians, the globalists, cultural Marxists. He doesn't mean Jews, honest. It's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. Especially considering you could do the exact same article, but from the right. The right have been doing exactly the same shit. Because again, it's politics. Potentially disparate groups of people who have a unified goal of getting X-president into office or passing X law or whatever, right, will work together on relatively narrow bands of issues on which they agree to facilitate the implementation of those shared goals, right, or the victory of those shared goals, whatever. The fact that you're trying to make that seem nefarious is a little bit ridiculous. Like, that's how democracy operates, my man. Every situation you find yourself in terms of a political position you take or a piece of activism you're engaged in, will to some extent be a coalition of people. There are various people on the left who I generally like, but whose positions on some things I will dislike. But I'll still work with them on the issues where we agree. It's a coalition. There are people on the left who I absolutely despise, but I agree about a certain small number of things. I'll work with them on that. Again, that's fine, right? It's coalition. The same is true on the right. There are lots of people on the right who dislike the GOP establishment, the kind of neocon types, right? Who or nonetheless worked with neocon types to try and get Trump elected initially and to try and get Trump re-elected. They're coalitions of political operatives engaged in doing a politics during an election. It's not a nefarious thing. It is democracy. The fact that you're trying to desperately grope at something to try and protect A, your ego, B, Donald Trump's ego, and C, your love for Donald Trump, and just refusing to accept, huffing so deeply on the copium. Carl, make sure you don't get the bends, mate. If you get copium bubbles in your blood, you're fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries.
Which, that's a really, really... this is just a don't do sensationalism type note for journalists out there. Don't put a well-funded cabal of powerful people, okay? Because you know what that means. In political parlance, you know what that sort of thing refers to. You're hinting at a certain kind of anti-Semitism. You're hinting at a certain kind of QAnon bullshit. There are ways and means of trying to pep up a story with a little bit of life that don't involve directly playing into the, ironically, paranoid fever dreams of people like Carl Benjamin. You don't have to go down that path. It's cheap. It's lazy. It's hack writing. Please don't do it. And it's dangerous for democracy
to influence perceptions, change. So
there's two things I want to put together: influence perceptions and steer the media and information. Yep. Those are all things we kind of already know. It's just good to get an admission.
Yeah, and control the flow of information.
The elites of the United States use the media and the flow.
The elites. I wonder who they could be referring to.
Information to control the narratives in their favor.
I've been through this article, so I can tell you exactly. We will get to exactly the names of these people.
Good.
They name the people involved. The chief.
So it's not secret then, is it? Not really a conspiracy then. It's just some politics, Carl.
The difference between the US and countries that lost their grip on democracy, he concluded, was that America's decentralized election system couldn't be rigged in one fell swoop. That presented an opportunity to shore it up. In his apartment in the DC suburbs, Podhorzer began working from his laptop at his kitchen table, holding back-to-back Zoom meetings for hours a day with a network of contacts across the progressive universe. The labor movement, the institutional left.
The progressive universe. Oh, I wish such a place were real. Who wants to help build me a spaceship to go to the progressive universe? Sounds amazeballs. Me and Christy will be your co-pilots. We'll take you to the progressive universe. What the fuck am I talking about? They called someone as a witness and the name popped in the head as first. The pronunciation. What? I don't even know what Christy, I don't know what you're talking about. You're beyond me. You've surpassed me.
Like Planned Parenthood, Greenpeace, resistance groups like Indivisible and Move On, progressive data geeks and strategists, representatives of donors and foundations, the state-level grassroots organizers, racial justice activists, and others. So they have called it a conspiracy and named the groups involved, and named the architect of all of this.
Okay. Whoop-de-fucking-do. This is actually quite a boring story. I can understand why the author would want to try and give it a bit more oomph, a bit more pizzazz. But it's got a boring story of, oh yeah, there were these people who were doing like politics. Okay. Brilliant.
And then they're going to tell us exactly how this was executed. In April, Podhorzer began hosting a weekly 2.5-hour Zoom call. It was structured around a series of rapid-fire 5-minute presentations.
He's just going to... He was reading that thing and he hadn't even scrolled down, so he had to scroll past the stuff he'd just read that wasn't on the screen.
On everything from which ads were working to messaging to legal strategy. The invitation-only gatherings soon attracted hundreds, creating a rare shared base of knowledge for the fractious progressive movement. The meetings became the galactic center for a constellation of operatives across the left who shared overlapping goals but didn't usually work in concert. The group had no name, no leaders, and no hierarchy, but it kept the
So it's not really a conspiracy then. It's just some people doing a politics.
disparate actors in sync. Pod played a critical behind the scenes role, in keeping different pieces of the movement infrastructure in communication and aligned, says Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party. You have the litigation space, the organizer space, the political people, just focused on the W, the win presumably, and their strategies aren't always aligned.
The win
It allowed
presumably.
this ecosystem to work together. Protecting the election would require an effort of unprecedented scale. As 2020 progressed, it stretched to Congress, Silicon Valley, and the nation's state houses. It drew energy from summer's racial justice protests, many of whom were leaders and a key part of the Liberal Alliance. And eventually it reached across the aisle into the world of Trump-skeptical Republicans appalled by his attacks on democracy. I'm just amazed that they're just going to admit all of this.
Yeah, progressive movements were in a conspiracy with
It's not a conspiracy. Oh, for fuck's sake! Okay, right. 1 second, everybody. I've created a sign for them. Doing a politics. They were doing a politics. Don't make me tap the fucking sign. Dickheads.
each other
Yeah.
to protect the democracy. Well,
To prevent Trump from winning.
if Republicans would
Well, yeah, this is the thing, right? Usually you'd say one side over the other isn't protecting democracy as such. You're just advocating for your side. But in this instance, yes. Making sure Donald Trump lost the recent, not that recent, but recent enough, American general election was ensuring the safety and continuance of American democracy. That is true. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't ever come to that stage where one party is an absolute threat to democracy and one isn't. But that was the fundamental issue at hand here, okay? That's why I, a person who really is not a massive fan of Joe Biden, given Joe Biden's history, and that's putting it relatively mildly, for fuck's sake, I'm being diplomatic there, right? Because I'm significantly to the left of Joe Biden. And I don't like people who like sniff people's hair and stuff. He's a creepy man. Anyway, but again, compared to Trump, he's less creepy, which is odd. Anyway, sure. I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, but I was absolutely convinced that Joe Biden had to win, at least in part because Joe Biden would ensure the continuance of American democracy for at least the next 4 years. If Donald Trump had managed to get in, considering the shenanigans he'd pulled in open to try and subvert the American election in November, God knows what he'd done in private, and we're starting to see some of that with the recorded call to the Georgia elected officials and his call to try and get decertify it, and the fucking insurrection, which happened 1 month and 1 day ago, and all the rest of it, right? There would probably not have been another election in 2024. Not a fair election. Well, I mean, America doesn't really have fair elections. There wouldn't have been even a passable version, a passable interpretation, an impersonation of an election, of a genuinely fair election in America in 4 years' time. So yes, even though you're trying to see it as a dichotomy between advocating for one side and saving the democracy, actually they were both the same thing on this occasion. Advocating for Joe Biden was advocating for the continuation of American democracy. They were one in the same on this occasion, and that is one of the best indictments I can think of the modern GOP. They are an active threat to the furtherance and continuation of American democracy. The American project hinges on making sure that these fucking evil pricks never gain a real foothold in American elected life again. Now, they have a foothold, but it's shrunk. They were in control of all three branches of government not that long ago. They're now in control of none of them. Let's try and keep it that way, shall we? Until they at least come back to some semblance of reality. Whilst they've still got fucking QAnon scum proliferating throughout their fucking organisation, they need to be kept away from the levers of power. They're a danger.
doing this, shoe on the other foot.
Oh, God.
If a bunch of Republicans got together and decided in group chats to protect the democracy from Joe Biden.
And then reached out across...
They did do this. What do you think the walkaway movement was, which was started by Brandon Strucker, now in jail, lol, for his involvement on the 6th of January, the insurrection. Anyway, he started a walkaway movement, which was to get, like, LGBT people and, like, other sort of marginalised people to walk away from the Democratic Party. What do you think the Blexit grouping, the Candace Owens black exit thing, to try and get black people to walk away from the, quote, Democratic plantation? What do you think these things were? They were alliances of people on the right who may disagree on many things, but do want those more marginalised groupings who make up a significant chunk of the Democratic Party's voting base to, at least, if not necessarily vote for Trump, not vote for the Democrats. They were doing the same thing, Carl. What do you think the voter suppression laws and gerrymandering and all of that shit that takes place on these local levels, what do you think that is, if not a conspiracy? Again, a conspiracy in the more general sense, right? I'm not suggesting they're necessarily like doing a terrorism or something, although it's certainly anti-democratic. What do you think, though? How would you describe those things? They're a conspiracy of people engaged in politics trying to win at doing politics. Again, Carl, it's they're doing a politics, Carl. They're doing a politics. Hang on. There we go. I feel like I'm going to need to tap the sign several times now.
Across the island got Tulsi Gabbard and, like, was it Marianne Williams and other people like that, disaffected Democrats, to join in their conspiracy. Again, they call it a conspiracy. Then...
So what? I genuinely don't care. Carl, I don't care, mate. Fuck me. They called it a conspiracy. Well, I'm going to call it a seahorse. That means the man gives birth. It's gender madness.
I mean, all hell would be breaking loose.
No,
it
it
Fox
wouldn't.
News was involved. If Parler and Gab were involved...
They are. Parler and Gab were both involved in the fomenting of a fucking insurrection. So was Fox News. Fox News has been a political advocacy campaign group since its basic inception for the Republican Party, okay? It sucked Donald Trump's dick in the most embarrassing way possible. It was funny that Lou Dobbs got fired because there was a clips package of Lou Dobbs, like, just rimming Trump so hard. Oh my God, it's funny. It's what a spineless goon. What an absolute lickspittle of the worst kind. Piece of shit. Anyway, glad he got fired. Hopefully the Reaper awaits him, as it awaits us all, of course. I'm not threatening anybody. I'm not saying anyone do anything. I'm just saying, if he were to pass, look, gender-neutral toilets are important, is all I'm saying.
It would be unreal. Again, I mean, the way they describe it as a paranoid fever dream that they're telling us is real.
No, not they are telling us. The author described it as a conspiracy. The author described it as like a paranoid fever dream. What are you talking about? Those were not quotes. That was the author's embellishment.
Then, okay. In the end, nearly half the electorate cast ballots by mail in 2020, practically a revolution in how people voted. About a quarter voted early in person, and only a quarter of voters cast their ballots the traditional way. Yes, very secure, very safe, very democratic, that sounds.
Yeah, it is. Encouraging people to vote is democratic, Carl. True. It's very much democracy in action, absolutely. How is this motherfucker still on YouTube? Because he's still doing the same conspiracies that YouTube said they were going to kick people off for. He's still saying Trump only lost because a secret cabal of moon Jews were doing moon Jew stuff. By the way, to the new subscribers, when I say moon Jews, that's like my shorthand version of all of the weird QAnon bullshit. Some of them believe there's a base on Mars that was started by Hebrews and stuff. Anyway, so I'm like being ridiculous. I'm saying that's their perspective, okay? It's shorthand for that. Don't think that I'm literally engaging in like anti-Semitism, because I'm very much anti-Semitism. I think it's a disgusting cancer on society. But that's what some people like Carl believe. Although I dare say he's I dare say he wouldn't come out and be like, no, I fuck Jews. He probably wouldn't say that, but you know. What's his channel? His channel is the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. That's what this channel is, and it's shit. Thank you to Andy the Suckdem is now for following. Thank you very much.
In November 2019, Mark Zuckerberg invited 9 civil...
No, it's Mark Zuckerbuck. Please. We were told by my pillow guy last night, his name is Mark Zuckerbuck. How dare you?
...rights leaders to dinner at his home, where they warned him about the danger of the election-related falsehoods that were already spreading unchecked. It took pushing, urging, conversation...
I see, that joke, is that Ernie? I think so. That only works in American. Because auntie would be auntie here in Britain, so it wouldn't quite work in Britain. But in America, you could call me Uncle Semitism because I'm anti-Semitism. So it's the opposite of anti-Semitism. Rory Cats, I'm going to knock you the fuck out, boy. Why you're in, you're out, you're up, you're down. I don't know the rest of the song by what's her name? Katy Perry. Yes, Lindell is an anti-Semitic nutter. Absolutely.
Brainstorming, and all of that to get to a place where we ended up with more rigorous rules and enforcement, says Vanita Gupta, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Human and Civil Rights, who attended the dinner and...
He did that one. What you doing? What you doing, you silly one? Hmm? What you doing? Meow. Meow. I'll put him on screen one more time. Rory Cats, you're earning your rent. There he is. There's the boy. I really do need to install a cat flap. But then it'll just be fucking cold in here as well. Anyway, where were we?
And also met with Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey and others. She has also been nominated for the Associate Attorney General by President Biden. So she is now probably going to become a part of the Biden administration. It was a struggle, but we got to the point where they understood the problem. Was it enough? Probably not. Was it later than we wanted? Yes. But it was really important given the level of official disinformation that they had those rules in place and were...
Christy, did you do the video, the Prager video on Aaron Rodgers? By the way, just as we've talked about the superb owl, one quarterback who isn't there, of the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers was in a fucking PragerU video, which is very disappointing. And ironic, given that the franchise he plays for is owned by the fans, so it's quite socialist. Anyway.
Tagging things and taking them down. I mean, this is unreal. Who could have imagined a conspiracy at this level? Literally.
Oh, you want us to? Yeah, okay. So tomorrow, assuming that Christy's on with me tomorrow, we'll be looking at the Aaron Rodgers PragerU video. And know this. I'm going to be looking for some statistical anomalies in his career, because his career has been very good. But I'm going to pick apart his weak points statistically, because I am nothing if not A, a sports fan, and B, petty as fuck.
Coordinating to get social media to be against...
A passer rating of what on third down? Outrageous!
Trump and his supporters.
I mean, they were literally meeting each other to coordinate that they should take this stuff down. All in agreement that they are all progressives fighting in concert with other...
Did Rory Cat's purrs come through? Oh, that's good. Awesome.
The progressives.
to protect democracy.
To protect democracy. I do hope YouTube take this shit down. This is poor form.
On battling bad information, there was a need to explain a rapidly changing election process. Yeah, it's weird how suddenly you had to completely invert the election process, isn't it?
Completely invert? Do you know what words mean? In Soviet Russia, election votes for you. Carl, there's a fucking global pandemic, which was worsened by the guy who thankfully lost. There had to be reasonable precautions put in place. I mean, I don't know if Carl is like a COVID hoaxer. It wouldn't surprise me. He believes in so many dumb conspiracy theories, it's perfectly plausible that he does believe that COVID is a hoax, because he's a fucking moron. But the point being, it isn't a hoax, and therefore they had to put in place reasonable things like early voting, increased access to mail-in ballots and all the rest of it. And not just that, but the core part of this, the expanding mail-in ballots expands the possibility for fraud, is nonsense, on the basis that mail voting is actually generally safer than in-person voting. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? Numbers again, numbers and reality are not something that Carl lets get in the way of his like fucking delusional imagination land.
It was crucial for voters to understand that despite what Trump was saying, mail-in votes weren't susceptible to fraud, and it would be normal if some states weren't finished counting on votes on election night, which is the total opposite of reality. It's not normal that you have 3/4 or 2/3 or whatever it is.
No, but Republicans, overwhelmingly Republicans, voted to make sure that you couldn't count the votes before Election Day. So that's what they're saying. Yes, it's not normal. Under normal circumstances, it would not be cool for the fucking votes to be being counted that far into the process. That's true. But they couldn't even open the ballots in most places. They couldn't begin to count the ballots until either the polls had closed or until they'd counted all the previous votes in some states, which is like, I think New Mexico went on for like a fucking week and a half or something ridiculous. Like, it was just madness. So yeah, the fact that Republicans had been purposefully intransigent, not intransigent, what's the word I'm looking for? Obdurate? Whatever. They tried to act as a roadblock, specifically so that they could cry fraud. That was the whole thing. Trump wanted to be able to cry fraud. So that's what he did. It's all about trying to invalidate the result because he knew he was going to, or very strongly suspected he was going to lose.
Mail-in votes, and it's not normal for them to not finish counting the votes on election night. The Voting Rights Lab and Into Action created state...
Well, that's actually true. They are, because there are certain places where votes can come in after Election Day itself and still be counted, as long as they were posted before like the polls closed or whatever. So there are states where that is true, actually. It would be almost impossible for them. In fact, it would be illegal for them to shut the count down before like 2 or 3 days after the election. Now, usually the amount of votes that will come in late like that aren't enough to swing an election because they're like a couple of hundred or something. But the point being is that it is perfectly normal in many places in America for that to be the case. It isn't here because we do all paper ballots and we count the postal ballots before. Yeah, I know. It's mad, isn't it? Or nearly all, I can't say literally every single one, but the vast majority of postal ballots in Britain are counted before you ever put an X in the box in the fucking polling station. Because they have to be mailed in early, so they get counted before the day. It's like, that's how that works. That's a sensible approach to mail-in ballots. It also means if there are problems with certain ballots that come in early, you have a set amount of time between the counting of those ballots and the actual election day to sort any of those discrepancies out, rather than having to do it amongst the flurry of millions of other votes coming in on election day itself. The election staff can focus on that, correcting any errors there, rather than also having to deal with the flood of election day votes. So, again, it's surprising that, isn't it? When you put rules in place that actually make elections more transparent and more sensible and more time efficient, you end up with a clearer, more trusted result. But then again, for Trump, it was never about actually defending democracy. It was about power grabs at all costs. Or
specific
any cost.
memes and graphics spread by email, text, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, urging that every vote be counted, even votes that aren't valid. Together, they were viewed more than 1 billion times.
What? Even votes that aren't valid? What are you talking about?
Democracy's election task force issued reports and held media briefings with high-profile experts across the political spectrum, resulting in widespread coverage of potential election issues and fact-checking Trump's false claims. The organization's tracking polls found the message was being heard. The percentage of the public that didn't know that didn't expect to know the winner on election night gradually rose until by late October it was over 70%. So lie enough to the public and they will believe it.
Yeah, you've just explained Trump's entire fucking PR strategy. You've literally just explained. You've hit it on the head there. You've absolutely nailed it, Carl. I suspect you mean Democrats, though, don't you? Because you're a hack. But, yeah, Trump lied so often. Look, Trump's got almost like a pathological obsession. Pardon me. A pathological obsession with only speaking lies, it would appear. He's a very, very dangerous man in that regard. I'm not one that believes you can armchair diagnose people, but I think that it would be enormously surprising to find out that that man had a clear mental health bill. Like, clearly, I think he suffers from certain issues, let's say. Now, that doesn't belie or negate any of his responsibility for his evil actions. I don't think he's a psychopath. I just think he's a delusional narcissist of some variety. Whether that necessarily falls under X or Y medical diagnoses, that you'd have to actually have a not Trump appointed medical health professional analyse him for that.
That's the propaganda machine at work.
Because I don't trust Trump for that for 1 second. Especially when Trump will, like, you know, when it's Trump telling you what the doctor said rather than what the doctor actually said. When he was going through that man, woman, camera, TV fucking thing, and he was going, like, the doctor was saying, wow, we've never seen anything like that before. What? Have they only ever tested lobotomy patients before this? What are you talking about? That's not that impressive. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he was senile or whatever, maybe he wasn't. But the point being is, they obviously have seen that before. You're lying to us, Donald. Like, it's just nonsense.
Podhorser, meanwhile, was warning everyone he knew that polls were underestimating Trump's support. See, now that is how they think that Trump is going to steal the election. Having support
by being popular.
By being popular, yeah.
But he isn't popular. Like, he's never been popular. He lost the popular vote twice by a combination of 10 million votes over the two elections. Over 10 million votes, indeed. What are you talking about? They genuinely, the rowing. It's difficult to be able to fully integrate people like this back into normal political society and discussion because they live in an alternate reality. You can't even begin. It's like the old thing about even if an alligator could talk, you couldn't have a conversation with it because its frames of reference would be so fucking like weird and out there. All it knows is that it wants to like eat you, or are you a threat? Can it fuck you? That, it's just a base instinct animal. And I'm not bragging on alligators or anything, but they don't have that higher cognition, so they won't be able to talk to you. And in a reality sense, this is the same. They can speak the words, but they don't understand reality. So trying to talk to them about a real situation, and they'll just go off onto a weird tangent about the ghost of Hugo Chavez. You can't begin to really do a lot with that. You'd need someone really trained in like neuro-linguistic programming and things like that to try and decode the nonsense for them. You'd need actual trained medical professionals to begin to pick apart some of these things. There's no doubt that Q has done some real lasting damage to the body politic around the world, actually, because there are lots of QAnon supporters in various places in the world. And trying to pick that apart will be a key task going forward for democracies around the world, trying to undermine the misinformation campaigns and to try and bring people back from the brink of the kind of Q cliff, as it were, the point of no return sort of thing. Did anyone see the? It's actually a very interesting piece of journalism. The QAnon documentary thing on CNN the other day. It was mainly hosted by Anderson Cooper, who's a bit annoying as a journalist, I have to say. Although he's very nice man by the looks of things, but he's a bit giggly at times. It's a bit strange. Anyway, the point being, he was like interviewing a former QAnon person, and the QAnon person was going on about. He literally apologised to him. He said, "I'm sorry, I once believed that you ate babies." Imagine someone saying that to you and being serious. And Anderson Cooper took it with aplomb. He's a very fine, kind of interpersonal communicator or whatever. He's like a good journalist in that way. But the guy literally said to him, I used to think you ate babies. 8 babies? What kind of madness is this? And he genuinely meant it. He did believe that. And there are still millions of Americans who believe that shit. Not necessarily just about Anderson Cooper, but about lots of people. They're obsessed with Tom Hanks. They think Tom Hanks eats babies and, like, has sex with them and stuff. I don't know in what order. It doesn't really matter. It's just disgusting. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, Bill Gates is an evil man, but it's not because he eats babies, because he doesn't eat babies. It's because he's a corrupt multi-billionaire. That's why. Like, come on now. It's fucking madness.
Analysts had recognised there would be a blue shift in key battlegrounds, the surge of votes breaking towards Democrats driven by tallies of mail-in ballots, but they hadn't comprehended how much better Trump was likely to do on election day. Trump isn't rigging the election. Trump is just... Winning.
No, he isn't. He isn't, and he didn't. Genuinely, if YouTube are to take seriously their claims that they're going to take down videos about election fraud now, this has to go. At least video has to be taken down. Now, I'm not even one of these people who necessarily believes that should always take place. I think there are ways and means you can go about it or whatever. But if they're serious about what they've said, they should take this video down, because that's an outright lie. And yes, actually, going back to the thing the person said, yeah, the eating babies thing, it does go back to the blood libel about Jewish people and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's rooted in there, definitely. The fact that it's like the key linchpins in the Q theory are people like George Soros and other Jewish folk. It's not a surprise. It's not coincidence that they generally tend to hone in on Jewish people rather than the kind of weird Christians that we know were engaged in horrible things like Rupert Murdoch. Not that I'm saying Rupert Murdoch eats babies, although he is commensurately evil with that, I would say, in the long term. Although maybe not as illegally so, because he's able to change laws. Like, this is the ironic thing. He's going, fucking dickhead Carl here is going on and on about the cabal of leftists that are trying to do blah, blah, blah. Rupert Murdoch has been doing that covertly and overtly in several places in the Western world for decades. And he doesn't fucking care. That he likes because he's a right-wing hack. Look, the idea that Carl gives 2 fucks about democracy is farcical given his support of Donald Trump. It really is.
The people just wanted Trump.
No, they didn't.
They knew. The racial justice uprising sparked by the George Floyd killings, and this is where the left comes into it, right? This is where we get...
Trump at no point got above 50% during the entirety of his fucking presidency. He was never popular, Carl. He was very, very loved amongst the people who loved him. And that's generally speaking still true and will remain so until he dies. And probably afterwards, like some sort of weird Jesus. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe that'll be the next Q goalpost shift. When Trump dies, they'll say, oh, he's not really dead. He's gone to hang out with JFK Jr. and they're going to come back. Trump JFK Jr. 2032 or whatever, Nonsense.
It's the left being class traitors and useful idiots of the big banks, Wall Street, the establishment, all the social media companies.
Dickhead, you were sucking Jeff Bezos' dick earlier in this thing. You don't get to be like, class traitors to the working class, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, when Jeff Bezos has to wipe Carl Benjamin off his dick, I don't think you get to claim to be like working class hero Carl Benjamin. You twat.
How they don't care about them and they are just being used, right? The recent racial justice uprising sparked by George Floyd's killing in May was not primarily a political movement. The organizers who helped lead it wanted to harness its momentum for the election without allowing it to be co-opted by the politicians. See, they're taking advantage of you. They just admit that they are taking advantage of you.
We know, Carl. We know how they operate. Like, this is the thing. When these motherfuckers complain about like corporate wokeness, there's no one on the left who actually thinks Gillette give a fuck about like women's rights. They're trying to sell razors. We all know that Pepsi don't give a fuck about trying to dispel racial disunity via fucking Kylie Jenner giving a Pepsi to a police officer. They're trying to sell soda. That's all that's taking place there. We know, Carl. No one is under the illusion that temporary alliances with, capitalists who happen to want to get rid of Donald Trump means that the capitalists now care for us. That's obviously not a thing. Like, shut the fuck up, man. It is so dishonest.
Many of those organisers were part of Podhorser's network. So they were with him. They were linked to him.
Yep.
They knew him.
They knew they were being used, and they're happy to do it.
They were being told what to do by him.
Yeah.
From the act.
Well, no, not being told. Oh, gee. Again, Carl, the article literally earlier said they didn't have leaders or like a formal structure. So, whilst he may have organised things and people went along with it or whatever, he wasn't like dictating to them and they were just doing it. They literally said so earlier in the fucking article.
Activists in battleground states who partnered with the Democracy Defense Coalition. I love all of these Orwellian terms. Ministry of Love, Ministry of Truth, Ministry of,
Defending democracy.
Yeah.
Can we get some 1984s in the chat, people? Because Carl's definitely obviously not read it. So can we get some 1984? This goes beyond 1984. This is 1985 indeed. But I want some 1984s in the chat because Carl mentioned it, and it's like, I can't encourage people to do a drinking game, but I can encourage people to type 1984 in the chat. Dickhead.
Yeah, the Democracy Defense Coalition. What did you do? Well, we made sure that the people didn't get the person they voted for.
We found out that Trump was popular.
Again, YouTube. They're literally doing the thing you said you would get rid of people for. They're not getting the people they voted for. No, they did. They voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden, actually. So they did get the person they voted for, you lying fuckhead.
So we tried to stop it.
Yeah. But they took leading roles, right? And so this, I mean, they go on to explain a bit more, but there's no point. You know exactly what's going on.
I just love how the BLM organisers here, they know that they're being used.
Shut the fuck up, Joey. No one cares what you have to say.
They're happy to be political prostitutes.
But anyway, moving on to strange
political prostitutes.
Bedfellows.
I say as Carl Benjamin hangs out the back of me for a living.
About a week before Election Day, Podhorser received an unexpected message. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce wanted to talk. So now you get a government agency trying to get in on this. The AFL-CIO and the Chamber have a long history of antagonism, but behind the scenes...
Is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce a government body? Is that true? .com. So it's not. It doesn't say. The United States Chamber of Commerce is a business-oriented American lobbying group. It's a 501c6, so a non-profit organization. It's not a government organization. Carl, you're an idiot, man. That took me fucking 10 seconds to find that out. Now, I didn't know, because I assumed that all chambers of commerce were private. The British Chamber of Commerce is. But I thought, well, maybe in America, who knows? They do love business, integrating it. But it's a private organisation, Carl. You're such a fucking liar. Oh, my God.
the business community was engaged in its own anxious discussions about how the election and its aftermath might unfold. The summer's racial justice protests had sent a signal to business owners too, the potential for economy-disrupting civil disorder. With tensions running high, there was a lot of concern about unrest around the election or a breakdown in our normal way we handle contentious elections, says Neil Bradley, the Chamber's Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer. These worries had led the Chamber to release a pre-election statement with the Business Roundtable, a Washington-based CEOs group, as well as an association of manufacturers, wholesalers and retailers, calling for patience and confidence as votes were counted. So business gets into bed with union activists in a what they are calling a conspiracy against Trump, because they're
No, they're not. At no point have they said it's a conspiracy against Trump. At no point have they said that. You have said that. And you can make that claim if you want to, although you would be good to show some evidence of that, Carl, rather than just read one article. But even so, that's not at all what's taking place here. They got together because a democracy is generally good for people, right? So they got together and they put out a statement saying, let's just try and be calm and let them count the votes. Like, I mean, if that's something you want to try and twist into something nefarious, Carl, I mean, good luck with that. But, I mean, Stretch Armstrong couldn't make that one go, mate. That's embarrassing.
That if Trump wins, there's going to be a massive amount of civil disorder, presumably from the leftist groups that they've just been directing.
Dickhead, there was a fucking insurrection by right-wingers. You don't get to play like, well, maybe the left would have been violent. The right were violent. Shut the fuck up, man.
Because they are aware, I assume, that the way that they have primed left-wing activists to be, and the permissiveness that was shown during the George Floyd riots, means they're going to lose a lot of money with rampant mobs of Black Lives Matter supporters and Antifa burning down cities.
There's no cities been burned down. This, again, you can tell that they're a hack. When they start going about cities have been burning down, or there have been riots for 4 straight months, when there were like a very small number of riots and like a couple of buildings got burned. Hack. Complete hack bullshit. And again, I will reiterate, you musing as to left-wing violence that could potentially have happened rather pales into insignificance when we see the right-wing violence that did happen. Yeah. Carl. Oh yeah, and Carl was one of the right-wing scum that was putting the AOC lied thing about, you know. Like if we go onto his channel, he made a lot of that. Even though she didn't lie. And you're a piece of shit for saying that she did. Where is it? AOC doubles down on her lies. AOC provably lied about the Capitol riots. AOC the radicalizer. Carl, you're such not just right wing, you're far right scum. Shut up.
Am I misreading this?
No, again, Carl, you're not misreading it. Misreading would be a genuine and legitimate mistake, which would be forgivable. You are actively wanting to lie about a situation based on the, frankly, somewhat embarrassingly sensationalized article you found, which, again, is from a source that if they'd said something you didn't like, would be, you dismiss it out of hand as mainstream media, blah, blah, blah.
Like, I got nothing. I don't know what to say. The only thing I do have is you accidentally said that it was a U.S. Government institution. Chamber of Commerce isn't.
Isn't it?
It's a lobbying group.
Oh,
so it represents the biggest industries in the
US.
US.
I didn't know that. I thought.
So that's why
my
this
mistake.
This is big business. Yeah. This is big business siding up with the unions, which they should not be at any
point. No, it's fine when it's like democracy, yay. No, I'm loathed for unions to get involved with that sort of thing, but ultimately speaking, if it's just let's calm down and do the election, that's fine. They're not saying let's calm down and let them count the votes and also suppress the rights of workers. That's not being said. That's not being said. That is almost certainly what is sort of intended, I suppose, by the bosses, but that's not what's being said there. So the workers, the trade unions saying let's try and be calm. Let's not descend into some sort of weird civil war, because civil war wouldn't be good for anyone, businessmen or well, actually, it would be good for businessmen, wouldn't it? War is always good for business. That's where the famous song got it wrong. War, what is it good for? War profiteers. It's war profiteers. Anyway, but it wouldn't generally be good for a lot of businesses outside of war profiteering, and it certainly wouldn't be good for workers. So let's try and not do a civil war. Again, I don't know how you can try and spin this as a controversial statement in any way. Sorry, guys, but as an adult lifelong trade unionist and trade union official, I can tell you, I would be more than happy signing on to a thing with any motherfucker virtually, outside of fascists or whatever, saying like, let's calm down, let's not have unrest about the election, let's chill the fuck out, yeah? That I'd be happy with that. That's fine. Call me a cuck if you wish. Call me a crazy sellout. Call me a neo-lib. Call me a something. Other words that don't really mean a lot anymore. But I'd be fine with that.
Non-clown world.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, just more proof that the leftists are class traitors. Like, trust.
Motherfucker, you've been backing a billionaire, at least in theory, for years. Class traitors, eat my fucking ass. The operation gaslighting every motherfucker is going full steam ahead with Carl, isn't it? Jesus Christ. A working class hero is something to be.
The Chamber of Commerce always endorses the Republican candidate.
Right, okay.
So,
I guess they call themselves the Chamber of Commerce in order to fool rubes like me into thinking that they are a government institution, don't they?
Well, it makes sense.
But why would just because it's got the word chamber in it, you think it's official? You really are a dense bastard, man. Fuck.
Some prestigious.
It very much does.
But that's the point. That it's literally the businesses teaming up with the unions, then teaming up with BLM, then teaming up with progressive activists, and then Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and all the rest of it by name.
Yep.
That they're all going to work together to protect the democracy of the United States.
To control the flow of information.
Control the flow of information.
Yeah.
To change laws.
Look, I agree. They shouldn't have the power to do that. But you didn't mind when they were allowing the Trump conspiracies. Now you have a problem that they're stopping the Trump conspiracies. Like, you can't really have it both ways. I think these some sort of antitrust legislation needs to be enacted here to either break them up or partly nationalise them or something. Because these new media barons of the 21st century, the Zuckerbucks, and it's Zuckerbuck now, okay, that's his name, the Zuckerbucks and the Dorsey Bucks and the what's the Elaine? I can't remember the woman who runs YouTube now. That's so annoying. Oh, never mind. Anyway. Not Wozniak, it's something like that. It's a kind of Polish sounding name and I can't remember it. Anyway, those kind of people have far too much power and it needs to be taken away from them. Okay, it just is. It's completely unreal. Susan Wojcicki, thank you. The Susan Wojcicki books. These people need to have their power severely curtailed because it's not a democracy when you have a very small number of people controlling the flow of that information. That's not cool.
In their favour.
Showing up, standing down, the next section. Election night began with many Democrats despairing. Trump was running ahead of pre-election polling, winning Florida, Ohio, and Texas easily, and keeping Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania too close to call. But Podhorzer was unperturbed when I spoke to him that night. The returns were exactly in line with his modelling. He had been warning for weeks that Trump's voter turnout was surging. Again, people were voting for Trump.
Oh, so you're happy to trust that part of the election, but not the other parts of the election? No one's claimed that no one voted for Trump. I'm happy to accept, albeit not happy to come to the realisation or the wider implication of it. But in terms of the raw data, the numbers, I'm happy to accept that 70-whatever million of people voted for Trump. That's fine. Yeah, that happened. Most elections in America are something like 50-50. And it's often how those break down in the swing states that makes the difference or whatever, right? That's just the way it goes. I don't know why you're now saying, well, people voted for Trump. Well, yeah, but lots more people voted for Biden, you fucking idiot. Like, I don't know what your case is here. Well, I do. You don't have a case, but whatever.
They know that people were voting for Trump. But as the numbers dribbled out, he could tell...
Yeah, but more people voted for Biden. He won both the popular vote and the Electoral College pretty comfortably in the end. Again, the red mirage was a very real thing. I'll be honest, I was twitching a little bit. My arsehole was fucking twitching on election. I was thinking I was getting some very, very strong election night 2016 vibes. There was some 2016 energy going on, and I was thinking, oh, fuck me. Oh, Jesus. But thankfully, it didn't quite work out that way because, you know, the postal votes were pretty badass because Trump shot himself in the foot by being a conspiracy theorist idiot.
But he could tell that as long as all the votes were counted, Trump would lose. Right, so all the votes, regardless of whether they're valid votes or not, were counted, Trump would lose. That's very interesting. He knew
whether they're valid or not. At what point are they talking about whether they're valid or not? When all the votes were counted, Trump would lose. Again, at no point does he hint at all at invalid votes. You're just making shit up, man. YouTube needs to take this video down. They absolutely do. Like, I'm not usually one for like censorship of videos and stuff, but this, if they're gonna hold consistently to the taking down videos which promote election fraud, this needs to be taken down. There's fucking no doubt that that's true.
Knew what the results were going to be. Trump surging is not a coup. It is not stealing the election and is not a failure of democracy.
No one said it was. Well, I mean, outside of the broader context of Trump getting any support is a failure of the democratic system or the democratic society to try and, you know, curtail that kind of extremist bullshit. But other than that, the actual fact that people voted for Donald Trump is fine. Like, yeah, that's not a failure of democracy. That's allowing democracy to take its course. But that's the thing. You were literally doing the thing, Carl, of saying, well, he got the votes on election day, so, and then they should have just stopped counting there. When he was ahead, they should have just stopped counting. Like in the various states where, when Trump was ahead, they were screaming, stop the vote. And when he was behind, they were saying, count all the votes. Like, what the fuck? Can you not see what's going on there? And the thing is, yeah, most of them could. They were just full of shit.
We wanted to be mindful of when was the right time to call for moving masses of people into the street. As much as they were eager to mount a show of strength, mobilizing immediately could backfire and put people at risk. Protests that devolved into violent clashes would give Trump a pretext to send in federal agents or troops that he had over the summer. And
yeah, people were worried, Carl, and I was worried that because like it's bizarre. I thought that I couldn't envisage Trump doing the thing that he needed to do in order to allow the election to go, or the election result to like take effect. That being that he conceded and like stepped aside, because that's generally what you would see, and people, a guy would lose and go, "Oh, I wish the next president luck. God bless the United States. Peace out," and then fuck off into retirement, right? To pull a George H.W., if you wish. But Trump didn't do that, and there was no like legal requirement on him to do so either. He just left, like he was like forced out by reality. But people were genuinely worried, and I was one of them, that he was going to try and do like a kind of, well, he did try and do a coup. He was going to try and do a coup. Like, there's no fucking doubt about that, okay? So, like, yeah, I can perfectly understand people wanting to potentially have shows of strength and move people into the street. Yeah, that's absolutely perfectly in line with good civic action. If someone tries to steal your election from you, if someone tries to steal your democracy from you, you get out into the fucking streets, okay? And you don't leave until that motherfucker is being frog-marched into Guantanamo. Or whatever, you know. Maybe a prison in America, perhaps. Although technically that counts as America. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Mainland America, let's say. So yeah, that's the idea that that's them doing a coup is a bit ridiculous, really. Like, that's the America. Again, this gets you into some potentially dodgy territory, but let's just say there have been times in history where the use of political violence, say the American Civil War, can be seen in a historical context as a justified, necessary and righteous action.
Rather than elevate Trump's complaints by continuing to fight him, the alliance wanted to send a message that the people had spoken, so the word went out. Stand down. Protect the Results announced that it would not be activating the entire national mobilization network today, but remains ready to activate if necessary. So this is like the left-wing version of the Proud Boys, only they actually did
are
coordinate.
incongruent with the people in charge.
What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? Also, like a dozen Proud Boy leaders have been arrested for actually doing a coup, or trying to do a coup, whatever. So again, your hypotheticals about what the left might have done had Trump been able to like overthrow the election result, it doesn't really matter when, you know, as part of that effort to try and steal the election, he actually did, or the Proud Boys, along with Trump and all the rest of it, tried to do a coup. Like, they actually did do violence, they killed people. Yeah, it's fucked up.
And big business, and social media, and probably the media themselves. And they were
Love your videos, Kev. I love my videos too. Thank you.
told, stand down. So the useful idiots of the left were commanded by these people not to go out and protest because they thought that might be to Trump's advantage.
Not commanded, they were like advised not to. It's called political again, Carl, you're going to make me tap the fucking sign again, aren't you? Hang on. What? Why won't it show up? There we go. You're doing a politics. These people are doing a politics, Carl. Why is the cat scratching to get back in now? He's such a twat.
Do we need any more proof that these protests have been used cynically by the left?
Just democratic SA.
Yeah.
That's what they are, street thugs.
Democratic SA. Oh, fuck me. That's beautiful. What a fucking idiot. Shut up, Joey. Oh, for those who don't know, the SA were the forebears of the SS in Germany. They were the original like brown shirts. They were the ones that were eventually killed in the Night of the Long Knives, but they were the enforcers of Hitler's will.
Yes. And they're in complete control of them, according to their own reporting.
They're telling us this.
Yeah.
The progressives are telling us these guys are controlled thugs that we deploy when we need it.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, yes, the people are organised thugs that can overthrow a dictatorship when necessary. That is definitely true. I'm going to fucking kill this cat. He wants to go out for a poo, I think. He wants to go out for a wee-wees and or a poo-poos. He's very annoying. So I'll be back in 1 second. Apologies. He's a dickhead. But he's outside now. So.
Social media bias stuff. Completely true, and we coordinate with them.
Around 10 p.m. on election night in Detroit, when a flurry of texts lit up the phone of Art Reyes III, a busload of Republican election observers...
Art Reyes III? Is that Art? So Art Reyes III, okay.
...had arrived at the TCF Center, where the votes were being tallied. They were crowding the vote-counting tables, refusing to wear masks and heckling the mostly black workers. Right, so the Republican election observers were bad people, is what we're being told now.
Because they want to...
Not just bad people, Carl, but actively dangerous to the health of the workers there, people?
To observe the elections.
Because they want to observe the elections.
No, because they're being rude to people and standing too close to them in an era of social distancing.
Reyes, a Flint native who leads the We Are the People Michigan, was expecting this. For months, conservative groups have been sowing suspicion about urban vote fraud. Well, I mean, I wonder why.
Because you want to try and undermine the votes of black people. Because you're racist filth. That's why.
I wonder why. The language was they're going to steal the election, there will be fraud in Detroit long before any vote was cast. Well, I wonder why that was.
Because you're racist filth. I just answered you.
And then Time give us a picture of the vote count taking place in Detroit, where, as you can see, the Republican poll watchers are being prevented from...
No, Carl. This is a lie. These people are outside. These people are heckling the people inside. There are Republicans and Democrats and independents observing the polls inside. They put up this paper to stop people shouting threats of abuse through the window at people inside the room. Okay? Because this is a workspace. These are people threatening people inside the room, Carl.
Entering the building, and they boarded up the windows.
Yeah, random people. There were the actual official accredited Republican vote watchers in the room. These are random Trump idiots who just turned up. It would be less safe in terms of election security to allow these idiots in. Obviously.
So they couldn't see in. And Time magazine frames this as Trump supporters seek to disrupt the vote count at the TFC Center.
Because that's what it was.
Disrupt the vote count.
It's incredible. It is incredible. Just the lies.
It's not a lie. You're the fucking liar.
And the brazenness of what is going on here. Like, sorry, here's the conspiracy on how we fortified the election. Look at these evil Trump supporters who have come to
hang on, why are you putting supporters in quotation marks? They are Trump supporters.
Their constitutional duty.
No, they're not, Carl. These people are randos who turned up. These people are not vote counters.
And show that the vote count is bipartisan.
Well, they're disrupting the outcome.
There were, fuck's sake, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of Republicans. There were an equal number of Democrats. There were an equal number of independents who were watching the votes. These people are lying to you.
Fortification, yeah. I suppose so. It's unreal. I can't get over that Time magazine printed this. They are so powerful. They are so well connected. They're afraid of nothing. How close we came, the next section. There was one last milestone on Podhorse's mind. January the 6th. On the day Congress would meet to tally the electoral count, Trump summoned his supporters to D.C. for a rally. Much to their surprise, the thousands who answered this call were met by virtually no counter-demonstrators. Why do you think that is?
What do you mean, why do you think that is? Because they knew there was going to be trouble, so why get involved? Like, what do you mean, why do you think that is? Why do you think there are no people who oppose Donald Trump? Are you literally that stupid, Carl?
Preserve the safety and ensure they wouldn't be blamed for any mayhem, the activist left was, quote, strenuously discouraged from counter-activity.
Yeah, that again, yeah.
Podhorse texted me with a fingers crossed emoji. So, more proof that the leftists are just the useful tools of the elite.
Unlike the Trump supporters who were summoned by a billionaire to Washington, D.C. to do a riot, and then when the political use of those people had surpassed, he threw them under the bus. Had passed. He threw them immediately under the bus. Those right-wingers are definitely not the pawns of an elite. No. Don't be silly. Fucking
They're
hell.
organised.
They're
They're
organised.
an SA.
They're
They're
commanded
an SA.
by this.
Just because you keep repeating it, Joey, doesn't make it any less stupid. You fucking idiot. Anyway, the levels of cope going on here are off the charts, man.
Conspiracy. We won by the skin of our teeth, honestly, and that's an important point for folks to sit with, says the Democracy Defense Coalition Peoples. There is an impulse for some to say that voters decided and democracy won, but it's a mistake to think that this election cycle is a show of strength for democracy. It shows how vulnerable democracy is. I guess it does.
It's a mistake.
Yeah, but not in the way you intend that quote to mean, Carl. They're saying that there are vulnerabilities like, fascists trying to do coups and stuff and misinformation. That's what they mean by that, isn't it? And again, I don't know how this person is still on YouTube, frankly. I really don't.
Mistake to say the voters decided and democracy won.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a mistake.
That's Time magazine saying
Time
that.
magazine. Quote from the Democracy Defense Coalition.
Democracy.
Self-described progressives who were organising everything in a certain way.
With big business, the media, the social media, left being class traitors and useful idiots.
Hang on.
Need it.
Yeah.
The social media bias stuff. Completely true, and we coordinate with them.
Around 10 p.m.
Carl. Joey. Don't make me tap the fucking sign. Okay? Don't make me do it.
on election night in Detroit, when a flurry of texts lit up the phone of Art Reyes III, a busload
Reyes. Carl, it's not a difficult Hispanic name to say. His name is Art Reyes.
of Republican election observers had arrived at the TCF Center, where the votes were being tallied. They were crowding the vote-counting tables, refusing to wear masks, and heckling the mostly black workers. Right, so the Republican election observers were bad people, is what we're being told.
Oh, yeah, we've gone back.
Activity. Podhorse had texted, "It shows how vulnerable democracy." Time magazine. Quote from the Democracy Defense Coalition.
Self-described progressives who were organising everything in a certain way.
With big business, the media, the social media,
Unions, the BLM movement.
the activists.
Oh, God. Your tears. Your fucking tears. Oh. I'm going to use them to lubricate my penis and then masturbate over the election results. Yum, 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 yum.
They
They were all in concert with each other.
Yeah.
They're telling you that.
It's not that the voters decided and democracy won.
Yes, it is.
Members of the Alliance to Protect the Election have gone their separate ways. Democracy Defense Coalition has been
So
disbanded.
they weren't the useful idiots. They were temporary allies for a unified cause. Okay, that's, again, doing a fucking politics.
Though the fight back table lives on, Protect Democracy and the good government advocates have turned their attention to pressing reforms in Congress. Left-wing activists are pressuring the newly empowered Democrats to remember the voters who put them there, while civil rights groups are on guard against further attacks on voting. Business leaders announced the January 6th attack, and some say they will no longer donate to lawmakers who refuse to certify Biden's victory. Podhorser and his allies are still holding their Zoom strategy sessions, gauging voters' views and developing new messages. And Trump is in Florida, facing his second impeachment, deprived of the Twitter and Facebook accounts he used to push the nation to its breaking point. You mean...
You did this.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Him. He literally told them no violence.
Yeah.
No, but he also, again, it's very interesting the bits they tend to focus on. Whilst the riot was still happening, he said, "I love you, you're very special." Rudy Giuliani said, "A trial by combat." Like, you people are such trash. You're such scum. Oh my God.
Multiple times.
And he literally just said, "Vote for me, we're going to make America great again."
Whereas
is
you
that all
guys
he
were
said?
Actively coordinating violent groups.
Is that all he said? Are you sure he didn't say that there were good people on both sides when one of the sides was fascists? Are you sure about that? Are you sure that he didn't downplay the Carl Rittenhouse murders? Are you sure about that? Are you sure he hasn't consistently used violent rhetoric, literally saying he would pay the legal fees for one of his fans who punched an innocent person? He's consistently tried to back up violent cops. He has literally bragged that he sent the National Guard in to murder a guy in Seattle. That was a political assassination, by the way. He had not been convicted of anything at that point. But he just said, let's make America great again. Fuck off.
What you describe as a conspiracy.
Being unconstitutional, changing laws that are unconstitutional, and manipulating the media.
Whoa, time out. How are they unconstitutional? Please do tell me how they're unconstitutional, because the Supreme Court hasn't said that. Either the Supreme Court of the United States or any of the state Supreme Courts who saw this case, or those cases. None of them worked, did they? So, what are you talking about?
Media en masse, and then flagging everyone whoever showed it was nonsense on social media.
Mass deplatformings and coordinating Black Lives Matter and Antifa as the street thugs that we know them to be.
Cry harder, you motherfuckers.
As I was reporting this article in November and December, I heard different claims about who should get the credit for thwarting Trump's plot. What plot?
The one where he said he wanted to stay in power regardless, and that he literally wouldn't accept any other result other than him winning because it would be a cheat if he didn't win. That plot. That one, Carl, where he actively tried to hamstring the USPS from delivering votes that he knew would overwhelmingly favour his opponent. That plot, Carl? Yeah? The one where he literally orchestrated a fascist coup attempt in Washington, D.C. That plot, Carl?
His plot for people to vote for him en masse, a surge, is
yeah, but still lost by 7 million.
Trump's plot. Trump's plot was to take part in a fair election, as far as they seem to be describing it.
Of course, it's just he wanted a fair election where he literally tried to disenfranchise loads of people. They literally tried to get 150,000 Texan votes removed. Not because they were faulty in any way, but because of a very small technicality in the Texas law. Now, thankfully, that was thrown out by, I believe, a Trump appointee. So again, you can't really argue deep state on this one, I don't think.
I can't get over it. I just can't get over it.
You genuinely... That is the only true thing he said. He cannot get over this. He cannot move on from this. Fucking hell. Profound, Carl. Profound.
And the people who admit to conducting a conspiracy accuse Trump of being part of a plot.
No, the people in the fucking article didn't say it was a conspiracy. The author of the article said it was a conspiracy. And again, it does fall technically under the description of the more broad definition of what a conspiracy is. But what the conspiracy theories that are being criticised about, like Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and the likes, are not the conspiracy of some people, again, I'll tap the sign for you, doing a politics, Carl. They're doing a politics. That kind of conspiracy is fine. The I want to execute my political opponents because Q says so, that's not okay. Those kind of things are different. Both legally and spiritually.
Liberals argued over the role of bottom-up people power shouldn't be overlooked, particularly the contributions of people of colour and local grassroots activists. I'm sure they did. Others stressed the heroism of GOP officials like Van Langveld and Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. It's interesting, isn't it?
Carl, you are I genuinely, right, for all the dumbness, you can tell when he doesn't have a thing to say because he'll say, that's interesting, isn't it? Is it? Tell me why you think that's interesting, Carl. You can almost smell the burning of his two brain cells rubbing together, creating a bushfire of nonsense in his brain.
Isn't it Raffensperger? Very interesting. The truth is that neither likely could have...
But what does that mean, Carl? What are you insinuating there? I mean, I know what you're insinuating, but just be honest here. You fucking idiot.
...succeeded without the other. It's astounding how close we came, how fragile all this really is, says Timmer, a former GOP chair, Michigan. It's like when Wile E. Coyote runs off a cliff. If you don't look down, you don't fall. Our democracy only survives if we all believe and don't look down. That's because it's not based on reality.
It's an analogy, Carl. He's doing an analogy. For God's sake. Carl, he's doing a silly analogy based on a popular cartoon character from years gone by, who would, when he walks off the edge of a cliff, because he doesn't look down, because he believes he's still walking along the actual cliff itself, he doesn't fall. It's only when he realises, it's only when he looks down, he then falls. Right? The physics in that universe are strange, but they work for the analogy he's trying to use. That belief in democracy is what keeps democracy alive. If democracy, if the people refuse to believe the election results for one reason or another, then the democracy will die. The democracy will fall. It's an analogy, Carl. Jesus fucking Christ.
That's because it's not based on the facts.
Nothing you've said here is based on facts. They want to
continue maintaining a fiction. And they want everyone to believe in the fiction. And if everyone believes in the fiction, then everything carries on as normal.
The irony of Carl saying that is remarkable, considering his entire worldview is now built on a web of nonsense.
That's what they're saying.
Oh, look how salty this little prick is. Oh, seeing Carl angry makes me genuinely horny. I'll be honest, there's a little bit of a twitch going on there. There's a little bit of a... Oh, there's a tingle.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, I just don't know what else to say. It's like, okay, well... I mean...
Oh, God. Oh, sorry, this is beautiful. This is apologies to anyone who thinks this is self-indulgent. I assure you, it is self-indulgent, but also I love it. It's been 4 years in the making. This I wanted to see him this angry. Pardon me.
I mean, if they're just going to come out and say it, then I guess we don't need to bother proving it.
You've never needed to bother proving it, Carl, because your audience don't demand any actual evidence. They're fucking morons, yeah.
It's always nice to get an admission.
Yeah, but this is the shocking thing about this. Just the brazenness with which they do this. They name all of the people involved. They're proud of what they've done.
Yeah, it's again. It's that, Carl.
They're proud of stopping Trump from winning legitimately.
Yeah, he lost legitimately, yes. I mean, that is true. I'm very proud of my millions of votes, too. Shut the fuck up. Anyway. The tears of Carl are some of the tastiest tears, I have to say. They're beautiful. They're a beautiful, beautiful thing. Anyway. That distracted me for a little while. That distracted me for a few seconds. And that was the important thing tonight. If there's anything to take away from tonight, is that my content here is solely for me to pass the time between now and the inevitable swan dive into the chasm of nothingness that is death. That got deep, didn't it? Anyway, I'm going to go and probably watch a little bit of the Superb Owl from now on till whenever. And I'll be back probably, well, later today, UK time, but tomorrow for Americans, with probably Christy Winters, and we'll probably be looking at a PragerU video involving a football player, namely Aaron Rodgers. Disappointing. Very disappointing. But even so, we'll probably see that. There'll be 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. East Coast of America, and 8 p.m. Central European time. Anyway, time for shilling. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for your notifications and all of that shit. Hit the like button on this. Leave a comment. Go to my community page. Vote on the polls. Comment on the polls, like the polls. That's not a comment on Polish people. There are literal votes that you can take part in there, which the votes are being tabulated by Dominion and Smartmatic. So Good stuff. The ghost of Hugo Chavez doing God's work. Anyway, go and check me out on Twitch. Go and follow me there. You can subscribe to me there. You can give one-off donations on Streamlabs and PayPal. You can, if you really enjoy my work, you can give me a monthly donation on Patreon. All of the links are below there. The social medias are linked below, Twitter and Facebook, and the Facebook group for the happy hour, which I do with Christy Winters, is also there. All of those links are below. Thank you all for your listenings and your watchings. On Twitch, I'm going to kick you over to whoever the fuck is streaming. I don't know who is streaming, but whoever is, I'll raid into them. Hannah! You can go and check out whatever Hannah's up to. I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something. So we'll raid into them, I suppose. And I will say thank you all for listening and watching.